everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend, Publish, and Lead, and welcome to episode 247. Do you need a restart? I think restarting is a metaphor for a lot of things, but I want to give a practical example today of how I realized I needed a restart, and then to talk about 4 different ways that you can give yourself one if you are in need. So, one of the things that has happened to me, my laptop is on its last leg, and today my video did not work. If you're on YouTube, you actually see me, so you're wondering how I got it to work. I'm one of those people that avoids restarting my computer at all costs because I have 9 tabs open. I'm working on 5 things at once. One of the things I've mentioned as one of my writing goals for this year is to make sure I'm always closing out a writing session. So, for example, am I closing those unneeded tabs? Am I saving my documents? Am I making notes so I'm ready to write in the next section? So, this is something I'm continually working on because I always just sort of write to the last minute and then hop up and go and slam my laptop shut, which is probably one of the reasons why my camera is about to fritz out. And so one of the things I realized today, I kind of worked around not having a camera for a little bit this morning, and then it just occurred to me, why don't I just shut it off and turn it on again? Because I remembered a couple of years ago, I had my camera go out for Zoom and Teams, and it seems like such a simple thing, but it really gave me kind of some inspiration for an episode today because once I did it, sure enough, my camera worked. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can actually see me talking on camera. And I wanted to talk through just a couple of different things. And if you're watching on screen, you can actually see one of the things that I'm going to talk about. So, one of the things that writers will say is that they will go to a scholarly writing session. So let's say you plan to write for an hour after lunch. You're going to write from 1 to 2 p.m. Well, your morning was really terrible. And, for whatever reason, a class went wrong, your car broke down, whatever it was. But by the time you get to 1 o'clock, you don't really feel like going to writing. Maybe you dragged yourself there anyway. And so, one of the things that I will encourage our writing clients to do is to figure out a way to kind of reset yourself to be able to do that writing. So, for me, one of the things that I do to kind of mark off the distinction between teaching and writing is travel. So, if I'm going to write in the morning, I've talked about this many times, it's in an episode on kind of opening rituals to writing, but I will make sure that I have, say, go get a cup of coffee, go up the library steps, find my spot in the library and go and write. And so for me, that's a reset. It's not so much about the coffee. I also listen to like kind of a pump up playlist. So that's something that I will also have for everybody listening to this episode. I'm going to make a special one just for this. That's one way that I kind of signal to myself that, hey, we're in a restart mode. We want to go ahead and start writing now. Another thing that I will do is that let's say you are doing some writing, maybe in the morning, but it's just slow going, or you have kind of some other things that derail you. One of the best pieces of advice that I've heard is thinking about a work day as kind of a before lunch and an after lunch, which we automatically know, but to have an automatic restart built in. And this speaker, I don't know if it was like a TED Talk speaker or whatever, but they talked about how they always reset their day at 1 o'clock. And so that was the idea that let's say you're at work or you're, doing scholarly work somewhere between, 9 and 4 or whatever that the time is. And so the idea is that this person had an automatic alarm go off at 1 o'clock. And it was just a reminder, hey, go ahead and think about what you're doing. Are you supposed to be working on these things? Do you need to reset yourself? Do you need to move to a new location? Do you have to think about writing in a different way? What can you do? And I've always liked that piece of advice. So one of the things that I will do is if I'm just not really doing well with writing, or I'm kind of, bogged down with grading and all these other things, and it seems like I'm just not getting a lot of stuff done, whether it's writing or not, I will go to that and say, all right, at 1 o'clock, I'm going to reset this day that is getting off the rails and try to figure out a way to do that. So that might be one strategy, is just to think of a spot where you have kind of a general reset in your day, or a way to transition between activities. So I mentioned traveling, for me to get to a writing spot. Another thing that you might have is, say, between a class and a writing session, maybe you're walking somewhere, or maybe you're going to a new location to kind of signal to your brain, hey, we're starting over here. So that's one thing you could do. But there's plenty of other things you can do to reset. A second one would be Thinking about changing your mode, and that's what's on my screen right now. If you're on your YouTube, we are doing a free webinar on audio writing about how to use voice dictation to do scholarship. There's a lot of writers now that are in the car a lot. We have plenty of commuters that are doing sort of these crazy commutes for tenure track jobs or for graduate school. And so many of you have an hour in the car every day. Either, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes three, depending on how far you're commuting. And so one of the things that we'll be looking at is how can you get some writing done while you're doing these long commutes, but also through other sorts of ways to do audio recording for writing. So sometimes just changing modes can be a way to give yourself a restart on writing, but also give you another tool in your toolbox to address anything that might come up as a challenge. So that's something else that you could do. Another thing that I like to do when I'm trying to restart my writing is I will sometimes, if I'm in the middle of writing, I'm just struggling through a paragraph, or I just don't like the way something sounds, or I'm really kind of puzzled by organization. A lot of times I will copy the problematic bit out of the writing and open up a new document. So for me, there are many times that I will look at very complex paragraphs in complete isolation away from the rest of the text, because for me, that's one of the ways that I can figure out what is going on with this writing without looking at everything else. And something about having all the white space around that writing really offers, I think, a new solution sometimes, not always. And then, of course, I fix up the writing there, I copy the paragraph, put it back in, replace whatever I have as another thing. So that could be another way to think about a restart. And then the last thing I want to say is, many of us are getting to the point in the semester where a lot of grading is coming in. We have to start thinking about, okay, well, I'm at least a third of the way through the semester. Maybe my writing projects are not happening. Maybe I'm not getting as much completed. Maybe I'm just kind of struggling through a really kind of busy week. That has definitely happened to me in the last 2 weeks with just some unexpected kind of stressful situations that are time consuming. And so, another thing that you could think through is you could remake or restart what your schedule is going to look like for the rest of the semester. So maybe, initially you would kind of plan to do 8 hours of writing a week, but now you realize you're a little bit behind. And so you want to move some things around to make sure there's room for writing. So, we always send these episodes out on a weekend. You could use that as kind of an impetus to look at your schedule for the next week, the next 2 weeks, and see, is there a spot where I could just add 30 more minutes of writing to kind of think through a restart? Maybe you need to just move where the writing is to begin with. So maybe if you're going to give yourself kind of this brand new start with it, maybe if you have it in the mornings, but you really are not a morning person, maybe it's time to find another spot where it could potentially go and move some things around. I know academic schedules are really tight. So one of the things that we often do with clients, if you're interested in doing just a short 30-minute consultation with us, which is free, by the way, you can find it at defendpublishandlead.com. There's a little button to schedule, but we have a lot of people coming in that use those 30 minutes to just say, I'm not getting anything finished. Can you kind of help me work out where writing should happen? Kind of help us with, help me get a writing plan going so I know what to do. We're happy to do that. And sometimes that's a way to restart your writing, is to have someone else say, hey, here's some things that you could do to get a little bit more out of your writing productively. So I'm hoping that you're able to think through some of these strategies for this week. And if you're interested in catching us for audio writing, we're up at Eventbrite. You can follow us. It's just Defend, Publish, and Lead at Eventbrite. And of course, if you follow us, then you can get all the notifications. Most of our events are free, with the exception of our writing retreats, unless you're a Tuesday Toolbox member. Or you're able to check out some of our more intense workshops that we do a couple times a year. So, but most of the time our stuff is free and they fill up quickly. So if you're interested in joining us, you can check us out at Eventbrite for audio writing for this month, and keep following us to see what we have in store for the future. So happy writing this week, and don't hesitate to reach out to us if you need that restart that we just talked about in this episode today.